and I see Pixar, Disney, and I go like, and a bunch of people from Disney and Pixar are looking at this. Okay, this is it. I'm gonna get a call. I'm gonna get a call. A few weeks go by, and I don't get a call, but I get a letter from lawyers suing me
What?
because, yeah, because copyright infringement.
Keep them both in the tuck.
Welcome to episode 3 of ReFramed, where we unpack the creative process of what worked, what didn't, and what we do differently today. We're going to jump right into it and have a conversation with our guest, Ricardo Bernardini. Ricardo is an artist, an animator, and a storyteller I've had the pleasure of working with since 2022 on several pharmaceutical projects. We're going to talk about how we got to start in the business, why he chose animation as his canvas. He's been trying to produce an animated film for years now. The story and the plot are really compelling, and I want him to elaborate on that a little bit. We'll also talk about some use cases for AI, including how he's incorporating it into his work and how it might be the key to help him unlock scaling the production to complete his film. As always, I have to do a bit of advertising. Please subscribe to the channel, and I encourage you to provide feedback that will help to improve the content. I got some feedback from an old friend who thinks that keeping the episodes between 30 and 45 minutes would be better. So we're going to try and break it up into 2 parts if necessary. Thanks for watching, and let's get into it. Ricardo, how are you, man?
Chad, how you doing, man? Thank you so much for having me.
Good. It's good to have you. I've been thinking about, I kind of made a list when I started this, and I really thought about interesting people that I know and people that are doing interesting things. And so I have a few people, and you were definitely on that list, especially once I learned about your film and sort of the story behind it and just getting your backstory as we've worked together over the last couple of years. I know you were on vacation. I hope it was good.
Yep, amazing.
How was it?
Great. It was great. Spending time with the family is, has no equals for me. It's one of the most important things for me. And we spent a week at the beach. It was great.
Awesome. Good to hear, man. So I'd say, let's start off with how you really got into this business. I talked to a lot of folks. Some people said I just jumped right in. A friend from the last episode went to art school. So what was the genesis of your journey?
So it was a little bit unorthodox. And I think in this industry, nobody really gets into it. I don't know many people that gets into this industry knowing this is what I'm going to do, right? Or very few, at least in my case. Since I was a kid, I actually wanted to be an astronaut. So that was my dream thing to do. And I really pursued that until it got to a point that I couldn't come to the US and study aerospace engineering. My father just told me, well, you have to study some engineering. That's the only thing I'm paying for. So I went to school for electrical engineering, which after 4 years, I discovered that I hated it. I definitely didn't want to do that as my career. I just, left college a year before graduating and starting businesses. Like I wanted to do my own thing since I was 17 years old. All of a sudden, I came across this pamphlet about the internet, which was starting back then. And this is back in Venezuela. There was no way for me to connect to the internet, by the way. It was a magazine I was reading. And that just, it was a switch for me because it was talking about how eventually in the future, people will be able to, have channels and movies. And this was like very out there, like people talking about things that nobody even knew, like how you can come up with this. But, I just saw the future. It's like, for me, it was okay. There's going to be a way for me to have an amazing business. And I discovered at that moment that I was always fascinated with storytelling. But all of a sudden it was like, so you'll be able to create this content and people will see it all around the world. And this is amazing. And I all of a sudden I just started this business for creating websites, but realizing that I really was looking for telling story. That's what I was trying to get into. The truth is that I don't even knew anything about that industry. I didn't know anything other than I love movies and I love storytelling. But for me, it was a learning process, just going back then to a library and reading books about how to write, how to tell stories, how to just be creative in general, how to turn your ideas into something that you can put out there, right? And I actually started this website business. I tell you the truth, I didn't know I was selling myself as a storyteller,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess people saw me like that, saw this in me, and I was just making like, presentations, websites, interactives, demos back then, like DVDs that, were just basically telling stories. I started doing this for a lot of resorts in South
Mm-hmm.
America
Mm-hmm.
where I went then shoot when they were building the place, shoot the beach that they were in, and then come up with a story to basically sell the experience.
And were you shooting video or stills back then for those
Yeah,
resorts?
video. This was video. It was video back then. It was Betacam, and had the chance to shoot one project for this park that was on top of one of the biggest hills in Venezuela called Avila, and we shoot that actually in film. So it was an incredible story, and I think it was that project that I actually was the first time that I actually was directing,
Mm-hmm.
and I just it was like a click, like, okay, this is what I want to do. That's the first time that I felt that something came completely natural to me. It was something like I had a partner back then, and we said, okay, we have a producer, we have the actors, we have everything, and I was just gonna direct this. So okay, I'll do it. You have no idea what I have to do, but just work. Like even the actors that we hire were like, oh, what else have you done before? And I was like,
Yeah.
no, this is the first time I do this. And I discovered that I had that real passion for storytelling and the medium, right? Because you can do storytelling in, you can do, comic books or a book there's so many ways, right?
Yeah.
But I discovered that this medium of moving images where you can create sequences that convey feelings was something that I was really into it. Like that was what I wanted to do.
How did you go from live action now into 2D and 3D animation, which is what I know you for?
Exactly. So back then, a copy of 3D Studio Max. It was the first version of 3D Studio Max. It was a burned CD, and I installed it, and I just find out that I could actually make the movie there. Like, oh, again, build the environment, create the characters, do the whole thing in the computer without having to spend the money and the time to actually go find the people, the casting, the shooting, and all of a sudden I said, okay, yeah, like, I'm gonna try this. And again,
And so at what point do you feel like, okay, you got to a point where you felt like, okay, I was at the level now where I could start to go out into the quote unquote professional world and try to solicit clients and get projects?
yeah. So I think it was the beginning. How it started for me is because I was doing already this promotional materials for resorts. Uh, uh, it was for me just going and pitch the idea. Little animations, at the beach, it was like the ocean and the wave. And back then, nobody had ever seen anything like that. When I, took pictures of the hotel and, then went into After Effects and composed that and pitched that to the clients. Like, hey, I can do this even before the hotel is built with the renderings we have and the stuff we have. And we can do this storytelling where actually people will be able to see what is not there yet. And that's how I got into it. So the beginning was a lot of architectural modeling and then creating a story around that building. And that's how I got into it.
At some point, you transitioned to the US. So, what was that
Yes.
transition like? And how did you bring the skill sets that you had learned in Venezuela doing 3D Studio Max, After Effects? How did you bring that over with you when you came? And what were the opportunities that were available to you once you moved to the US?
I lived in the US when I was a kid. I lived in Bowling Green, Ohio for a few years. And for me, was something that I loved the, the, the way of living in this country, the whole idea that you can do anything, you can be whatever you want. I was a teenager and it was for me, this is the 70s, 80s. And for me, it's the best years of my life as a kid. So I always wanted to come back. In Venezuela had reached a level that I couldn't do anything more. Like there was nothing else I could do there because there wasn't a market for it. But I knew if I go back to the US, then I'll be able to work. And in my head, it's like I want to work for Disney. Like I want to do animation at Disney. It was really, my dream at that moment. until, it was 2000, the year was 2000, and I told Gabby that it was my fiance. We were going to get married at the end of the year. And I told her, you know what, not only we're getting married, we're leaving to the US. Like, I found out a way to get a business visa with the business I had already over there. And me and my partner work it out. You have to leave your company functioning over there so you can come here. And so what many people doesn't know is like, okay, we had a good business over there, but we have to start another one here. And the business over there has to keep making money. And now I have to hire people to do my job over there.
Got it.
So basically, you're here with the money you bring in your bank account. And basically, you're a baby. That's the way I describe it. Nobody knows you. It's like you're born again. Every single business that I was doing in Venezuela was either with a father or a friend that started a business, or somebody that knew me because I went to school or college. Or so here you're a baby. You think you know what you know how to do the business. I think what allowed me to actually get where I am now was that from day one, I told Gabby, I know where I want to go. I know what I want to do, but I'm pretty sure at some point I'm going to be flipping burgers because nobody knows me. I'll have to do something to sustain ourselves until I get there. And I want to tell you, the first 10 years were super tough. Like there was no way I was, tried so many different ways to get into the industry that probably the craziest story is that at some point I was desperate. I was trying, every time there was an opportunity at Disney, I will send my information, right? And take into account, you can only be a contractor because I cannot be hired. I have a business visa. So I'm applying for contracts and I keep getting rejected all the time. And then one of Disney movies came out and they had a little short film at the beginning called For the Birds. And this idea came to me. I love one of the characters that was there. I just thought about that character. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I created a little short film about how the character was an immigrant and got to be at Pixar and got hired and was in the film. And I did it, I did it hand drawn with the 3D environment. I like really put my soul into it and I put it online. And this is before YouTube, before any of that. There was this website called CGI Channel, and they were promoting big movies. Like, if you saw the front page, it was like back then, like episode 2 of Star Wars. Can't remember, big movies. And then I was publishing on their forum and I put it there. And I get an email from the guy that was running the website saying, hey, we love this. We want to do an interview. We're going to put it on the front page. And I'm like, okay, this is going to see this. This is happening. And they put it on the front page and it started getting like crazy amount of views. And it's, again, reiterate, like there's no YouTube, there's no social media, there's none of that. But I can go into the stats and see where the visitors are coming from. And I see Pixar, Disney, and I go like, and a bunch of people from Disney and Pixar are looking at this. Okay, this is it. I'm going to get a call. A few weeks go by and I don't get a call, but I get a letter from lawyers suing me.
What?
Because copyright infringement. And I'm like, no. Like, this is not what I'm doing. It's like,
Yeah.
I wanted to show how much I want to work there and how much I love what Disney does.
Yeah.
So, I called the lawyers and the guy, it was a lady, and she goes like, yeah, all that is good, but just take it down. Just take it down.
Yeah. The mouse has good lawyers.
Yes.
As they like to say.
I didn't have to pay anything, but the lady was like, just take it down, and that's it.
Yeah, man, that had to be like a knife in the heart kind of thing.
Oh man, that was like, and this is the middle of the struggle of trying to get the business going.
When do you think you got to a point where things really sort of started to take hold for you, and you started to find your footing?
So for many years, I was doing animations and graphic design. I was doing some visualizations, some previous work, but it wasn't until I had this idea of this movie that I wanted to do, the animation we talked about. It wasn't until I had a little bit of money and I entered a program with UCF. It was to help business startups find investment. And I signed up for this program. So one of the perks that you get, it was I was getting a nice office with, you still pay for it, but it was a much better rate that, if you were in the program. And then you had access to all the resources from UCF and their students. Like they will go and do work for you. It's because they are getting out of college and they will pay them instead of I have to pay. Instead of me having to
Got
pay
it.
them, they will be paying them. And you have to pitch your idea to UCF. It wasn't, so I went and pitched them, told them I had this idea that I wanted to make this studio and do storytelling. And I saw I'm gonna do a company that makes interactive stories. I said, not only that, I don't have to buy IP because I already have one. I've written all the stories, and we can use this one to launch the company.
So for those of us who don't know what UCF is, what is UCF?
So UCF is the University of Central Florida.
And where's it located?
So they have many campuses. The main campus is in Orlando. It's one of the biggest universities in the US, actually. And they have an amazing arts program for movies and animation and game design. So there was a lot of resources that I can tap into. At some point I had, I think, like 15 students working at the studio because I was working on that. I was working on a pitch to find investment. So I did it was like a 4 or 5 minute short for the story, for the story I was writing, but it was made so you can kind of see the potential on the iPad. So I had a presentation where I had one of the kids code like a mock-up of the game of how the stories, will be interactive. And I pitched this whole idea that it was a different type of storytelling with the person interacting with the story was kind of the editor. Like you could choose what would happen next, and then the story will develop in different ways. It's not a new idea. There are books that are written that way, where depending on what you choose, you go to the develop page. But because I did that short film, then all of a sudden I started getting noticed by people in the industry. So I got to talk to people that work at Universal, some people that work at Disney, but it's still nothing was happening until, of all people, this guy called Javier, he sees the animation and he tells one of the people that I was talking to at Disney, he says, you need to talk to Javier. He loved your stuff. And we work with him. He has a studio in Celebration. And I went there. So Javier, it turns out, it's from Venezuela. And he was the owner of the biggest VFX company in Venezuela before he moved here. And he moved here a couple of years after I moved here. So it's funny because when we met, we said, well, so we have trust each other because there's a few studios in Venezuela. There's not that many. And I know the name of his company because it was the biggest. And he said, well, I love what you're doing. Tell me more about this. And he basically loved it so much. He told me, hey, I have all this work with HBO and Discovery and Nat Geo and Disney. And I need somebody to help me out. I'm looking for a partner. And we basically became partners. All of a sudden, I'm doing work for HBO and Disney and Nat Geo. It's the sum, of course, of everything you're doing. But if you want, if I'll ask you what was the trigger that finally got me in, was making this animation and making it at a level that I was gonna be, I knew I was doing something that was really well done. It wasn't only the animation, it was the way the camera was framed, it was the sound, it was everything. I was trying to do something that people see it will go, what studio made this?
Welcome back to ReFramed. In the first segment, we talked a little bit about how you got to where you are now. And one of the things I distinctly remember so much, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, is when I forgot what project we were working on, but somehow we had some time to talk and you started telling me the story about this film that you've been trying to make. And you were showing me the concept art and the wireframes. And I was absolutely blown away by what you had showed me and the depth through which you had gone into the story. So talk a little bit about the story and the concept of the film. And then I want to talk about the process of what you've been going through over the years to try and complete it.
So the name of the whole story is Angal Tantara. And this is an idea that I had really since I was a kid. I didn't have a name for it, but it comes from something that I started creating as a kid without even knowing that I was creating it. If you ask me when I put a name to it, it was in 2000 when we were moving here. And the truth is, I couldn't find contracts when I got here. So I had a lot of time that I was just waiting for the phone to ring. I was just without work. And I took that time to write. So I said, okay, I have all these notes, all this idea. I'm going to actually write the story, right? But the origin of the story is comes from this need that I have as a kid to find an answer to the bad things that happen to you as an individual without you having any power over that. You know, as a kid, my mother is paranoid schizophrenic. And although I was raised in a loving home, unfortunately, because of her condition, she treated me really bad, psychologically and physically. I grew up basically in a Catholic house where you go to a church and they tell you God loves you and cares about you. And then when I get home and my mother had a manic attack, she will beat me like there's no tomorrow. And she will tell me that I was the worst thing that ever happened and that God didn't want me on this earth. So for me, it was like really, really hard, put those things together. So either there's a God that loved me or there's something else going on here.
Mm-hmm.
So I found there was this super heavy table at my house, like coffee table, and I will hide under that table. My mother couldn't reach it, I couldn't move it. And I got clear memories of me just drawing under that table. And I remember I was drawing this place where my real family was from. And I had to believe that I had another father, another mother in another place that will come someday for me. But this was just people that kidnapped me, or I didn't belong there. I needed to believe there was another place where happiness was. And I started creating this, and for some reason, maybe because the table underneath had wood, I started drawing these trees that were somehow my parents. And it's like you're a kid. I cannot tell you why I did those things, but I remember drawing those trees, believing that these magical beings will come and save me. And another thing that came, as I grew up, I had this idea. There was this special being that was the one that was able to choose what would happen. That everything that was outside my power that will happen, like say you're driving down the road and all of a sudden somebody crashes into you and you have the right of way. The light was green. It's nothing to do with you. So why is that this happened? Why is it that a baby is born? And that was a big thing for me. Was that a baby that is born to die a few hours, a few minutes later? Why the universe goes through all this complicated, energy heavy process to end it? Like there must be something that I'm not understanding here. So my answer to that was that there was this thing that will just choose what was the right thing only because it needed to make the universe balance. This was the controller of the balance of the universe. Like if you want to say it in a way of talk about energy, there's only a certain amount of energy. You cannot make more than what it is there. You can only transform it. And there's this being that is there saying, this must happen so we can maintain.
And are you thinking about this as a kid, or did this just
this is probably
did the idea develop as you got older?
As I got older, probably this was around 13, when I was about 13 years old. And what triggered that thought was it wasn't a baby that I saw dying at just birth. My girlfriend, I got a puppy for my girlfriend, and the puppy eventually had puppies. And the day the puppies were born, one of them died like a few minutes later. And, I was like destroyed by this. It's like, why this happens? Why is it this happens? And that's when that thought came into me. It's almost like I'm always trying to look for, I guess I'm an optimist, and I'm trying to look for a reason for things to happen or for being. And that's when that concept came. Then, I had a very, complicated after my parents got divorced when I was 17, and then after that, because of my whole experience with my mother, I had a very, say, eventful years.
Yeah.
You know, I, I always say that by the time I was 30 and I got married, I probably had lived, two different lifetimes. Like I have gone through so many things, and I know there's people that have gone through many more, but that was my experience, right? Once, and I was making notes about how my life was influenced by all these things, and when I finally sit down and try to make a story, I remember the trees, I remember this whole thing, and I started by creating, okay, so I'm gonna create the mythology of my story where my characters are from. And that's how I started writing. And it became this huge thing because I was just taking time to write this civilization existed here on Earth millions of years ago. And I was starting, I love to mix real things with things that have like a questionable origin, myth and tales with real events and use them in my story, right? So one of the things that I made, okay, this civilization was old, was this, since where originally these trees that I call Arcasians, everything that they built was with stones, with wood. It was like very natural. There was nothing that after, say, an asteroid crashed into Earth, there was no way that any of that will be left. So I'm trying to do, and not to be completely scientifically accurate, but just
Yeah.
enough for me to feel good about it, right?
For sure. For
And
sure.
the whole story, it was around my experiences. So I created this character called Angal Tantara. It's a girl, and this girl is the last survivor of this civilization that disappeared millions of years ago, and it disappeared because this, for me, it has the shape of an angel. This being that decides what
Hmm.
happens. Yeah, it keeps the balance. The angel had to decide that the civilization had to end, and the moment that he decides that this happens, this girl is born from the last of the occasions and everything changes. And for me, that represents the moment that she's born, represents the birth of hope. And I like to think of the things that we like to call like faith and hope and fortitude. I think those, I'm trying to treat those things as things that were created and they didn't exist. So my story is basically the story of the virtues, how the virtues were born. And the
Yeah.
first one is hope.
It sounds like you put a lot of weight on the character
Yeah,
in terms of the ideals that you want this character to live up to. Do you
yeah.
think some of that comes from the weight that you put on yourself with the challenges you've had growing up with your mom and everything in terms of what you want it to be? Do you think that some of that weight that you might have put on your shoulders, sort of like you transferred that into the character?
That's a great question. I never was asked, I never been asked like that. And now that you say it, I think that's the truth. It's like, uh, it's like I really, wake up every day being thankful, first of all, that I have another day that I can do things, but I want really, really hard to be the best version of me every day. And one of the reasons is because I really had a really bad time, like really, really tough childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I, I try to do the best that I can as a father, the best that I can as a friend, the best that I can as providing a service, as a husband. And I think that character, now that you say it, exactly, has all that weight on her. Like she has to prove that she has all these qualities, all these
Yeah.
virtues, which I
That's
think
incredible,
now
man.
that you're saying, that's what I'm trying to prove to myself that I have.
Yeah, no, that's really incredible because when we talked about it last time, we didn't go this deep and we didn't peel the onion back this deep. So that's actually really incredible. So talk to me about where you are now in present day with the script. I know at one point you told me that you had gotten some money and you were putting time and hiring animators. Where are you in the process of this journey of making this film?
I actually started working with an artist to create a comic book. Like, so, it's like, when I'm really desperate, it's like, it has to be out of me. It has to be out
Yeah.
there. And so I started doing little things with every time I had a little more money, I would work on the comic book or graphic novel. And then I would write. And I want to say at the same time, I'm, keep working on different projects. The Another big push happened when I made a short film for a contest. This ad on Facebook, it said, NASA's putting out a contest, make a 5-minute short film where you tell the story of the first people to live in Mars. And there was like the ad was out for like 6 months, but I read it when I read it, it was only 3 weeks left.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
but I was like, man, space. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid and do a short film. And then it says that the judge of the contest was Gareth Edwards, and Gareth Edwards directed Rogue One. But I was a fan of him before that because he was a VFX artist that made Monster, the movie, and he, got Quentin Tarantino to watch his movie. Like I was like,
Yeah.
that could be me. So I was following that guy when I saw, okay, this is the judge. So there's an opportunity to get to meet this guy. I call a friend of mine, Mike Tang, and Mike and I had always talked about doing a film together. And he is also a big fan of Garrett. So I called him, I remember it's like, I don't know, 10 at night. I go, Mike, I'm reading this and you're not going to believe that Garrett is the judge. And he goes like, well, I'm super busy. If you tell me tomorrow you have a story, I'll make a schedule because we don't have time. I have to go next weekend to your house and shoot whatever we're going to shoot. So I didn't sleep and I spent the whole night thinking, what is it I'm going to do? 5 minutes, only 3 weeks. So it cannot be VFX heavy. You cannot have any animation. We don't have time. And all of a sudden, this thing came into my mind, this woman giving birth on Mars. And I thought, well, this mother, what this father will tell to this baby, that it's all of a sudden a human that will have no access to what all of us, right?
Yeah.
You're born here and you're on Earth. We give that for granted. What would be the experience of that mother knowing I'm going to give birth to this baby? And because I follow my dream to be the first woman on Mars, I took away from my baby Earth. So that was my thinking. It was I can't remember what time in the morning. I told Mike and say, I have it. It's a letter that this woman wrote to her kid, telling her about her dream and what she feels. Mike loved it. Next weekend, we're shooting at my house. Of course, during that week, I took apart our living room. My wife was like, what's going on? I built a spaceship inside the living room and we're shooting here. My 3 kids are in the movie. So Emilia was 3 years old and she's in the movie, and Vicky and Leo, and everybody is like, we're all pulling together to make this. And, Gabby always tells me it was one of the most beautiful experiences as a family that we have ever had.
Yeah.
Doing that. So we eventually, he's helping me with the special effects. We're doing all this, and all of a sudden, it's like we need some music for it because it's looking really nice, but the music is stamped really doesn't.
Yeah. It doesn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't feel. And Javi tells me, well, I know this composer that does music for Disney, and he lives in Orlando, but there's a big shot. Like, this guy has worked on. He composed the music for all the big shows at Disney. You go like, well, we give him a call and see if he's, available. Of course, we have no means to pay him. It's like,
Yeah.
So Javi said, you know what? At that point, we had a little office in Celebration, and he goes like, let's call him and tell him to stop by, take some coffee. But we have all the screens with the movie on, like we're working on it. So he will ask. And so he gets there. And I never met him. Super nice guy. We have all the stuff there. He asks, what is this that you're doing? And tell, oh, this movie that I wrote, blah, blah, blah. Oh, can I see it? So I play it for him. And this is with temp. It's not finished. By the end of the movie, his eyes are watered. Like he's like almost crying. I didn't know, his past. I didn't know anything about him. But, he was adopted. And this whole thing about a mother writing a letter for the kid got to him. And he finished and said, oh, this is beautiful. This is amazing. And what about the music? And I go, yeah, I know. It's temp. Would you let me write something for you?
So the setup worked.
Oh, my God.
Man.
And, yeah. His name is Rick McKee, an amazing artist. And Rick goes like, who's doing the sound design? I go, I'm doing the best I can. Can I do the sound design? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, and at this point we have like a week left to turn in the thing. So he goes, no, I'll write something tonight. And the next day I'm at his house and he has composed this amazing piece of music.
And the lessons they learned. And I wondered, how would our lives be there? On that, the 4th planet from the sun. The red planet. My new home.
the short is okay. The music is like not kidding, like Oscar worthy, like it's like on another level.
Yeah.
And we finally send, of course, that there's 5 minutes left to send files, and I'm sending the file at that moment, right? It's like files uploading slow. I don't know if the file uploaded or not, and it's like okay. Like Mike and I were, well, this we did it. Like we have a short film that we made together finally. There was a excuse for that.
I appreciate you watching part 1 of my convo with Ricardo. I hope you got something valuable from hearing how his personal journey shapes his work. We're keeping things tighter with this new 35-minute format, trying to make the episodes more focused, easier to watch. Let me know what you think. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. It really helps. Stay tuned for part 2, where we dive deeper into short film 92 Mars, a chance interaction with Gareth Edwards, and why trusting your gut matters. We'll also discuss how AI is reshaping his process. You don't want to miss it.